6 p.m. April 26th, and I'll call to the order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for April 26, 2022. It's our regular scheduled meeting. And, this is a hybrid meeting with in-person as well as Zoom. Let's see, telephone number 1-669-900-6833, or the webinar ID is 844-4221-0420. And Carlos, would you call the roll, please?
Hello, commissioners. Here's your roll call. Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Waller.
Here.
Commissioner Sipperly.
Here.
Commissioner Connerton.
Here.
Commissioner Harcastle.
Here.
Chair Shaver.
Here.
Commissioner Wissig.
Not here.
She's not here.
She's not here.
I think she's not. Is that you? I'm just kidding.
Would you like to see an alternate?
Yeah, please. I thought you would call their names as well. Pardon me?
Should I?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Weimer.
Davey.
Commissioner Davey.
Here.
Let's see, I'll entertain a motion to seat alternate Weimer.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Sipperly and second by Commissioner White. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome, Mitchell. And I'd like to congratulate Jim Hardcastle for his appointment to the commission.
Thank you, sir.
And to April Davey for her appointment to the alternate position. Let's see, receipt of minutes. Entertain a motion for acceptance of the minutes of March 22nd, 2022.
I'll make a motion to receive the minutes for March 22nd, 2022.
A motion.
I will second the motion to receive the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Waller and a second by Commissioner Connerton. Any discussion? Joy or just checking out. Anybody? The only thing I noticed, I thought that Dan mentioned adding windows to the street side of the building. Was that a commitment or not?
You didn't find that in the minutes?
I did not. Did I miss something?
It's actually Trent's project, so it'd be something I have to double check on whether that was in, but staff can certainly take another look and make sure that it's included if that's been.
I see it under commissioner questions to staff.
But not a response. All right, just a clarification. I thought that was an important thing to do, to have that, element in that elevation would be really important. Hopefully that's in the case, that is the case.
I'll certainly have
It's-
staff review the recording to make sure we didn't miss anything.
All right, thank you.
for that.
So any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. On the receipt of the minutes of March 22nd, 2022.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and we've had a request to alter the agenda, which will require a motion, and that is to move item C Oh, wait, I have forgotten something here. Comments of citizens appearing for items that are not on the agenda. Don't see any online. That's James and Susan Inoy. Are you wishing to comment? I guess I'll take that as a no. Oh.
Their audio to work. See how the microphone keeps coming up.
Yeah, they're trying, it looks like. Oh, there it is. Would you care to comment, James and Susan Inoy?
What are you talking to?
Yeah, this is the public comment period, and notice you had your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll close the public comment period, and I'll accept a motion to move item C in the new items up as the first item to be addressed.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Second. Motion from Commissioner Weimer and a second by Commissioner Waller. Any discussion? I'll call for a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Terry, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to give you a presentation about an update in our floodplain regulations for the state. The state recently revised all the floodplain regulations as they apply to every community in the state. They were effective in January, and we at the city need to adopt the new regulations. And the reason why we have the regulations is that it allows our citizens to be insured under the National Floodplain Insurance Program. And without compliance with the regulations, our citizens wouldn't be able to have insurance. And so it's important that we apply the correct rules. We do have floodplain regulations in place now. I think that, we will replace most of them with the new rules. In general, they're very similar. There's a lot of criteria about how, where they apply, for residential structures, for commercial structures, what facilities are affected in terms of their designated use, like critical facilities and that kind of thing. I think the most important changes are that the new regulations have more definition about how the floodplain should be calculated, who is qualified to calculate it, how, the criteria for mapping hydraulics and hydrology, topography, those kinds of things. So I think in some ways it is more strict than the old regulations. There will be, more dialogue, I think, with developers and engineers about how the floodplains need to be calculated. There are criteria about, when there's a proposal, a development proposal in a floodway. For those of you who aren't familiar, the FEMA maps too, well, mostly for large streams, they map a floodway and a floodplain. The floodway is the most restrictive. You can be in the floodplain as long as you elevate your structure usually. But within the floodway, really no development is possible without remapping. And they define how that will be addressed and how it will be remapped and to what criteria you need to remap if you're in the floodway. So those are some of the more substantial changes with the ordinance. Some of the things will stay the same. You know, there's some administration things that are that precede our regulations, and I think for the most part those will stay the same. One more thing to highlight is that in our current code we have a variance procedure, and variances can be allowed by the Planning Commission. In the new code, it says that variances can be allowed by the community and allows for a provision for us to establish our own rules. And so I think that we can continue with the idea that the Planning Commission allows variances of the floodplain regulations, but I would say that it should come with a lot of caution. You know, if we aren't able to demonstrate to the Colorado Water Conservation Board, who promulgates these rules, that we haven't caused any additional hazard or increased hazard downstream to any other person or business below the alteration, then we have some liability as a community. So with that, I think there's a lot to it, and I would ask that you guys support us in changing the floodplain regulations as required by the state. Do you guys have any questions, specific questions?
Commissioner Wall.
You go first.
Okay. So one question I have, so it's passed by the state, and then so does every municipality jurisdiction in the state have to approve it, and then it's tied to insurance that if they don't do it, they're like scoundrels?
Yeah, that's the short answer, yes.
So that's yes. Golly, that sounds pretty screwed up. And then the other question I had was, so the 35-foot setback that we have from the high water mark, that
Yeah,
is that in that, or is that?
It's written into the floodplain regulations or our current ordinance, but and it will stay exactly the way it is. I will probably try to move it to one side or the other so it's more clear to developers that it's not necessarily a part of our floodplain regulations, but there won't be any changes to that provision.
Thank you, Chair.
Joy.
Did the floodplain maps change with this, or?
No.
No,
But we are in the process of a remapping effort. Our current maps are from 1985 and don't even have the same basis of elevation that we currently use today. So FEMA through Wood, who's a contractor and engineering contractor, are working on remapping the Colorado and the Roaring Fork rivers, along with a lot of our tributaries, the 3 Mile, the 4 Mile creeks, a number of our creeks that come out of the north side, even the small ones. With that remapping effort, I think we'll be back in front of this board to explain the changes, and there will be changes. The good news is that the hydrology behind mapping is changing. And so, they've already adopted the hydrology, which is how much water is coming through the system, through the Colorado, and the overall elevation of the water is lower in Greenland strengths than it was before. For the Colorado, we're anticipating the same thing on the Rolling Fork, but I can't say what the changes are going to be yet for our small tributary creeks. So that will be coming up. We'll be going through an adoption process in 2024.
and that's for debris flow zones as well?
So debris flow zones will be included. The city has a number of debris flow zones, particularly on the east side.
Mhm.
With the debris flows that happened in the canyon, we had conversations, I guess, with FEMA about whether insurance was provided for debris flow or whether it was only provided for flood events. And they assured us that that debris flow would be covered under the flood insurance as well. So with that, we will, go ahead and model those areas, and people will likely want to obtain insurance up there, because I do think that, the hazard exists, and, it would be a good idea to obtain insurance.
Thanks, Terry. So with the remapping, you say your department has to remap everything. Is that part of the state regulation? Like, who pays for that?
So fortunately, it's not my department.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. You're planning. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
No, we are involved as
Right.
as they move through the process, and we review mapping changes. But it really is it's a contractor, an engineering firm out of Denver called Wood that's doing the work for FEMA. And so, our role in the mapping has been to talk to them about which creeks they were going to map, which areas, help them with some of our information that we have internally about culverts and crossings and that kind of thing. But we're not paying for or doing them.
Thanks.
Terry, could you give us an example of a variance that would come before us, and let's say we grant it? Could you then talk a bit about like the implications of granting that hypothetical variance? Like liability, insurance, acts of God,
We do have a variance procedure, and I have never had a developer or a contractor request a variance. And if a variance were requested in front of this board, I would likely recommend that you deny it.
would it be like something like a variance to build in a floodplain? Would it be like that, or would it be something else?
It would be likely a variance request to build in a floodway. And because building in the floodplain is allowed,
You're allowed.
you have to elevate your structure.
Yeah.
But once you touch the floodway, the city has a requirement, or I have a requirement as the floodplain administrator, to ask them to do a hydraulic model, essentially, of what's going to happen to the floodplain. And they would go through a process of demonstrating that to me through an engineering study. And then, if they still wanted to proceed with a variance, and there was a variation in the floodplain elevation by more than 0.3 of a foot, they're required by FEMA to submit what they call a letter of map revision, a LOMR. And FEMA gets involved with those processes. We as a community have the ability to say that we don't think that the downstream impact will be that great, and that that we believe that there really won't be a problem. But I feel that that is a subjective measure, and I would be really reluctant to recommend to you guys that we pursue. I think that a lot of this is engineering and science-based, and I would be uncomfortable making a recommendation to you guys that we accept something.
Thanks, Terry. So this remapping that's going to happen on the Roaring Fork, the 35-foot setback is defined by somebody.
Very high water.
Yeah,
Ordinary high water, that's correct.
but that's by, I can't remember, it's Corps of Engineers or somebody that's created that standard, right? And then this mapping may be different. Will there be some bringing together of the minds then?
I believe that the ordinary high water will stay the same, because the ordinary high water was mapped based on a biological standard about, where they can see a certain type of plant and a certain type of disturbance, that happens on a regular basis.
Mhm.
This floodplain elevation is really, a 100-year event, or a 1% chance every year. So
Right.
the idea of where the floodplain line would end, or where the floodplain line would be and ordinary high water would be, I think they're different elevations, and I don't anticipate any changes in the ordinary high.
So the flow, what'd you call it? The
ordinary high water. Versus
No, but the main channel you were talking about is
The flood.
different than that ordinary high water that would be inboard of that.
So I think you're thinking of, and now three things, because I think I've confused everybody. So from a flood standpoint, we're concerned about the floodplain,
which is where the 100-year flow goes through a channel. And within that floodplain, there's a really a narrower band. We call it the floodway. where
Floodway, yeah.
Most of the water flows. There's a kind of a thinner strip on either side of that floodway, and where we anticipate, structures could be, as long as they're elevated. In addition, we regulate the ordinary high water, which, compared to the floodplain and the floodway, is somewhere where the water flows, ordinarily, on most years. So it would be different than the floodplain, and I think that elevation really won't change with our map.
Are there places where that 35-foot setback would fall within the 100-year floodplain then?
yeah, I'm sure that's true. Yeah.
I mean, so much as canyons and, things go straight up in the city, it seems to me.
Yeah, no, we're, I think, fortunate actually to have channels that are really well defined. And so our water, when it floods, we have a pretty steep channel that it normally stays in.
Mhm.
If we were, in other places where they have wider channels, we'd see more widespread flooding.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and let's see. Go ahead, Amy.
I just have one comment just to the variance that you discussed. There is like a clause in here saying that if a variance is asked that would cause some undue hardship, it should be like allowed, or it is allowed, or it permits something that otherwise would be prohibited. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, it's true. We have some flexibility, but I would say, we have to, within our approval criteria, we have to determine that there's no increased vulnerability of flood losses, no additional threat to public safety and welfare. So some subjective things as well, but from a risk standpoint, again, I will probably always advise you not to.
Carolyn?
And I might presume, but I figure it's safe to ask that, would any of these regulations be applied to developments retroactively?
No.
Okay.
When the regulations take effect, that'll be the day that we apply these.
Sort of an aside, if these regulations had been in place, would Two Rivers Park have been able to be constructed?
We did evaluate the 100-year floodplain and the floodway within the Two Rivers Park. So with every city project, we're very careful to do our due diligence and make sure that we're constructing, outside of the floodway in particular.
In anticipating future regulations to it, I guess. Okay, thanks.
So does this get kind of sprinkled throughout 70, 40, 20? I mean, it's not in one lump sum, it gets distributed into the code?
So 70, 40, 20 starts with, it's sensitive area protection. There are a number of sensitive areas. And so where, we would start to modify would be section 15, which starts with development in waterways and areas of special flood hazard. And from there, I would probably keep things like findings of fact. Flood hazard areas of the city are subject to periodic inundation, kind of general provision or things that we always say in addressing hazards, statements of purpose, methods of reducing flood losses, recommendations to how to avoid these kinds of things. I would probably start to alter in section 4, lands to which this subsection applies, basis for establishing areas of flood, special flood hazard, all of definitions, all of these things will be updated with the new regulation.
But we would anticipate that 24, which is where your riparian setback is, would stay.
Mhm.
So it probably, it's those sections in between.
Yes. like I said, I probably shift it to one side or the other so you can all see it. And it's not very.
Okay, and we are the recommending body to council, I presume, as a code change. Good. Good. Well, I'll entertain a motion on planning item 1222, code amendments to title 070040 as it relates to floodplain regulations.
Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Highcastle and second by Commissioner Sipperly. Any discussion? Oh, okay. Well, we'll call for the question.
Oh, sorry.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Harry.
Okay, back to our agenda. In order now, planning item 6621, variance on 727 Blake Avenue. Emily is our guy.
Sorry, he's sharing the screen.
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
There we go. Okay, so right now we have planning file 6621, a variance for 727 Blake Avenue. And so there is one action item for this variance. It is a application for a variance to consider variance from section 70-70-30 accessory structures to allow an accessory structure within 5 feet of the side yard setback on the north side of the property located in the M2 mixed use central core zoning district. So again, this is for an accessory structure and side setback. So just to start out, here's just some general information on the property. So it's located here downtown over on Blake. Again, this is the action item. Planning and Zoning Commission is the deciding body, and you'll have the options to approve with conditions, deny, or continue the item. And staff recommends approval of the variance request with findings and conditions on page 6 of the staff report. And so just some background. This is the property location in yellow. Everything kind of that pink color is the M2 zoning district, which is a lot of the downtown area. Mixed use central core, so residential and commercial uses. And then this is just the same image without the zoning, so you can kind of see it's next to the Manor building. Anyway, one of the taller apartment buildings. 727 Blake. And so one thing about this application is, so this structure has already been built. It's read that in your staff report. And so initially, the owner of the property approached city staff and asked about building an accessory structure shed in this location. And the M2 zoning district, so this is a picture of it. In the M2 zoning district, you're allowed to build up to the lot line. I think on this next page I have here. So here are the code standards. In the M2 zoning district, you're allowed to build up to the lot line for the primary structure. So if you think about like your buildings right on Grand, all those, they come up right up the sidewalk, they're built to the lot line. And that's for primary structure. In accessory structures are held to their own specific setbacks, which includes the 5 feet from side. And so what happened was the owner had asked staff, okay, where can I place my shed? And staff explained that, you can put it right up to the lot line in the M2 zoning district. This shed is smaller than the size required for a building permit. And so based on that response from staff, the owner in good faith went ahead and built the shed. And then later on, kind of further staff review, we found that since it's an accessory structure, technically it still needs to be 5 feet from the side setback, which is what prompted this variance application, because it would need to be officially approved to be there. Otherwise, it would be not. So again, when you look at a variance, and this is a regular variance, and so we have 7 criteria, and they all need to be met. And so these are the 7 different criteria. And I'm going to go through in a second how staff finds that this application meets each one of these criteria. So first is just that the subject property has an exceptional shape, topography, building configuration, or the condition that isn't general condition throughout the zoning district. And so most properties in the zoning district are like a mixed use building that's built right up to the lot line. So the fact that this property is a single family dwelling, detached, not up to the lot lines, that in itself is a little atypical. So it's not a general condition. So 2, the strict application of code standards for which a variance is sought would produce undue hardship. So the structure was built following initial approval by staff. So in this case, strict application of code standards would require either tearing the structure down or moving it 5 feet into the property. 3, the applicant did not create the hardship by their own actions. So again, structure was built, in good faith, and without that initial approval by staff, the structure would not have been built. 4, the variance request does not harm the public or impair the intended purposes of the code. So the variance does not harm the public. And then again, there is sort of the disconnect between the zoning district allowing building up to the lot line in the case of a primary structure, but then the accessory structure requirements requiring 5 foot. So again, doesn't harm the public or impair the intent of the code. 5, variance request demonstrates exceptional hardship not related to purpose of convenience or financial burden. Once again, structure is already part of the physical environment. It was built in good faith. So again, it's not. It would be a financial burden to have to rebuild it, but it was at no fault to the owner. 6, the variance will not violate building or fire code requirements. So structure was built with fire-rated materials on the north side, closest to the nearest structure, and the construction plans were reviewed by building department prior to construction. So even though there wasn't a building permit, because it's anything 120 square feet or less does not require a building permit, there was review by staff before again the owner went ahead and built it. And then again, the variance is the minimum variance that will afford relief of the subject standards of the code. The structure is already existing, so that would be just the minimum standards of the code. So reviewing agencies, it was a few referred to different city departments, comments on it. Additionally, no official public comments were received. I did receive 1 phone call just asking about the variance, and I'm just curious what it's for. Much of an opinion. So again, this is the action item. Planning and Zoning Commission is considering variance request to allow the accessory structure within the 5 foot side setback on the north side of the property.
Okay, thanks, Emery. Any questions for Emery? Go ahead, Jim.
Did the building commence work after a pre-application development meeting in your offices, which might have had a result of notes or emails or communication back and forth?
So they're included in the packet. There were some email. This was summer 2021, so we weren't. I'm not sure if we were right back in the building. So a lot of this was email correspondence. So they submitted the plans again. It doesn't require a building permit. If this were a larger structure, it would have required a building permit and gone through a longer review process. But due to the size of the structure, anything less than 120 square feet, it doesn't require a building permit. But typically, we will ask the property owner to just have a conversation with staff. Okay, what do you want to build? Where's it going to go? Typically, once we understand what they would like to do and that it meets all code. So yeah, go ahead. So that's the way I have it here. So there's communication, emails, back and forth, staff.
Okay, thanks.
And the applicant, I think, is online, so if you have any questions.
Yeah.
James.
Okay, will the applicant care to offer any comments or say anything to us as a commission?
Do I have to do that?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. If you have any questions of me about the process, I'd be glad to answer any questions. I am finished with building the shed, and I mean, it is working out good for me. And so I don't know. Do you have questions for me?
Maybe James, if you could repeat your question. Just about.
Oh, I was satisfied, but just in terms of whether there was a pre-application development meeting, it sounds like you moved forward in as an advocate for your own best interest, but as a due diligence to check with the city. It seems like you were. I'm happy with the answer.
Okay.
Go ahead. It's fine.
James, they were just asking about like previous correspondences between like Gretchen and Victor and just different emails before you went ahead and built the shed.
Sure. So I think my first phone call started out and I reached a woman named Jessica who referred me to Gretchen. And I invited Gretchen over to the property and she came over and walked it through with me. And I staked out where I wanted to put the shed, and with, you know, the understanding that, you know, it was, she was saying it could possibly be on the property line, but there are a couple of rules that she would have to check on. And then we also looked at the pin that's in the ground and we established the property line. And I had sent her a copy of the shed that I wanted to build. And she said she would check on it. And I know there's a garage next door to me that sits right on the property line on both the back and the side property line. And she said she was going to go research that. And then we had a couple of other conversations in there, a couple of emails, and then she verbally told me it was okay, and then sent me an email explaining to me that she checked out with the building department. And as long as I did it, you know, with up to the fire code and it was fire rated, which I did do that with the 2.5/8 sheetrock for the fire rating. And I had an architect draw that up for me and I sent that back to her, and she, you know, approved it and said I was all good to go. And I didn't need a permit if it was 120 square feet or under.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Jim, go ahead.
This would just, it's not necessarily for an answer, it's just for general consideration and for us to think about. If it does meet 7 points of criteria consideration and it really doesn't impact negatively the surrounding community, what's to keep us in the future from approving other requests like this before they come in? And then to add to that, what's to prevent other future mistakes, misunderstandings, or misinterpretations from others who move forward, and especially quickly, and build it and then claim the same kind of condition with no judgment to the applicant today with that comment?
So first part is, so like with this situation where we kind of have the disparity between, okay, this is what the F2 zoning district allows, and this is what's required of accessory structures. I would say that now staff is very aware of that particular wrinkle in code. And so that one, like anybody in the future that asks about it, we're gonna be very aware of, okay, this is where it needs to be, this is what would require variance. Which again, so like, if it were in this particular zoning district, I think you are looking at a similar situation. Now, as far as someone building it and then, coming back for approval, I think that also takes into account, here there's a lot of communication. I think staff, as far as making a recommendation in their staff report, would have a different attitude if someone maybe had a preliminary conversation that wasn't having such a final conclusion, and then they went ahead and built it. I think staff would look at that differently.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that answer. I appreciate it, as opposed to a quick, give me an answer and then they hang up on you. You're comfortable and confident that you had the ability and time to speak with the applicant long enough to where you feel like they didn't move forward against what it is that you were interpreting. Thanks.
Can I make a motion to approve?
Well, I need to open it up to the public for public comments. So I'll do that now. Anybody here or online? If you're online, please raise your hand. Or in attendance, please come up forward. Not seeing any. I will entertain a motion on planning file 6621 variance at 727 Blake Avenue. Staff is recommending approval with findings conditions on page 6 of the staff report.
I'll make a motion to approve planning file 6621 variance for 727 Blake Avenue. I feel like it meets all of our variance criteria on pages 4 and 5. And where are the conditions? Oh, okay. And the approval would be with the staff conditions on page 6.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Hardcastle. Any comments? Please.
I just have one comment. People build stuff like this all the time without guidance from the planning department. So I commend you for consulting with them out the gate, and then also coming through to clear up, request the variance to clear up the scenario. So well done.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on to planning item 8221 design variance at 1120 Palmer. And Emery has got a busy night going here.
I'd like to make a comment. A pre-comment.
A pre-comment. Okay.
Pre-comment. I talked to Richard. These are dear friends of mine, but I really have no knowledge. They made a point of not talking with me about any parts of the project. So I just wanted to put that on record. Richard, if that's a.
Thank you. And we've looked at the situation, determined that there's no conflict.
Okay, thank you.
I would also make the same comment. I know the applicants and we're friends as well, but I have no vested interest.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we all live in a relatively small community and have friends.
Emery, please.
All right, so this is planning file 8221, a design variance and administrative adjustment for 1120 Palmer. So this request has 3 pieces to it. So again, this is going to be a design variance, which has different criteria than a regular variance, which I'll get to in a minute. But the 3 items are 1, consideration of a design variance to allow a front-loading garage in the downtown core. 2, consideration of a design variance to allow a roof pitch with a minimum less than 612 in the downtown core. And 3, consideration of an administrative adjustment for building height in 15% excess of maximum allowed building height of 27 feet in the residential medium density zoning district. So this property is located at 1120 Palmer, surrounded by the residential uses. And then the back, it's undeveloped. Again, zoned RM1. And so again, we're gonna have 3 different action items. So I'll go through this presentation, kind of present all of it, and then you take each item as it goes. And again, similar options: approve item with suggested conditions, approve with additional conditions, deny with findings, or continue the item. And so for action item 1, for the front loading garage, staff has recommended approval with suggested findings and conditions on pages 14 to 17 of the staff report. For action item 2, for considering the design variance for the roof pitch, staff also recommends approval of that design variance with findings and conditions on pages 14 to 17 of the staff report. Then action item 3, which is considering the administrative adjustment, staff recommends approval for the administrative adjustment, suggested findings and conditions on pages 14 to 17 of the staff report. And I'll get more in depth on each of those in a second. And so the project summary is on this property. There's currently a trailer. An applicant proposes to build a single family home with an attached ADU on the property. And so the property is located in the RM1 zoning district, and then is also subject to downtown core associated design standards. And the downtown core is any property that is part of like the original town site of Glenwood Springs. So when the city was founded and they went out and platted all the original lots, that's what's considered the downtown core. So again, just for more reference, properties highlighted in blue, everything kind of orangish is the RM1 zoning district. And then to the kind of the east of the property, slope goes up a lot. You have some areas zoned hillside preservation. And if you go to the south, there is an area zoned RR rural residential. So that's kind of some context. Then again, this is just with the zoning pulled off. You can see the property there. So again, it's just at the end of that section of Palmer, 1100 block. And again, just a little more, these are some neighborhood photos. So looking south, down Palmer, to the east. So that's what's the existing structure on the property that would be demolished as part of the project. West is just looking across the street, and then just north, looking down Palmer as well. So more residences. And this is the site plan for the project. So you can see it's up into the front of the property. The existing trailer home is shown that's going to would be demolished. Structure would be built here. And again, so there's an existing curb cut that's already there that the applicant would be utilizing. And just some design review on the general project. So this just kind of staff went through the design, not just the variances. I'm just going through for how it meets code. Just a couple of things. So this zoning district has a 20-foot setback for the front. An uncovered front porch can go 10 feet into that setback. And so the front porch you see on the front part of the house above the garage, that would be allowed. A second part is, so you'll see the maximum height, or excuse me, the heights, and it's broken down for each elevation. And on the north and west elevations, that height exceeds the maximum limit allowed by the zoning standards, but is within the limit allowed by administrative adjustment. So again, and then number 3 is just again the roof pitch. So all these other items staff. And then also too, I think I forgot to mention, so I'll get to it when we get to the administrative adjustment part. One thing, a lot going on with this one, so one thing at a time. So with the design variance, how that is different than a regular variance is you do have 7 criteria. However, they are split into 2 sections. And so you have section A with 3 items, and you need to meet all 3 of those. And then there's section B, which has, I think, 6 items, and you need to meet 4 of those. So it's kind of all three of the first one, and then at least 4 of the second set. And so for this particular standard, and so this is considering a design variance to allow a front-loading garage in the downtown core. So go back to the elevation. So what that would be is, this property, you access it from Palmer and you have your garage that is front-loading. And for any property in the downtown core, that's not allowed. And so that's what the variance request is asking for. So it's just having a front-loading garage. Typically, so you can see here, so the code, the intent of code is that you would have a rear accessing garage from an alley, which this property, there is no alley, and winter just pretty much stops. Before you hit this property, back to this property. So the actual criteria here, so section A, so variance requested does not harm the public safety or welfare. Staff found that it does not harm public health, safety, or welfare. And then 2, the variance requested is in general conformance with comprehensive plan and with the stated purpose and intent of the code for which the variance is sought. So staff found variances in conformance. Redevelopment of this lot with an ADU meets the following comprehensive plan goals: direct development to locations and building forms that are cost effectively served, and to provide housing opportunities for the entire community. And staff also found the intent of the code, which is to require alley access, is really not possible or practicable in this location because there isn't an alley. And then 3, the variance requested will not violate building or fire code requirements. Again, it doesn't violate any of those code requirements. And so that's section A. So all three need to be met, and staff found all 3 were met. And then you have section B. So there are 6 criteria here, and staff found that in this case, 5 of the criteria were met. So 1 is the variance requested advances the goals and policies or achieves the intent of subject standard to the same degree or better, but not applicable because the intent is that you have a rear access driveway, and so this can't really accomplish that, which is the reason for the variance. 2, the subject property has exceptional shape, topography, building configuration. So most properties in the RM1 zoning district, and in particular properties in the RM1 zoning district, which are in the downtown core, typically have an alley, which allows for garage access. And so this property not having an alley would be considered atypical. 3, the variance requested results in benefits to the community that are equivalent or exceed benefits associated with the subject standard. So again, it's just weighing the fact that it's impracticable to require rear access when there isn't an alley, and then weighing that against the benefit of an infill redevelopment of this lot. So I felt that results in a benefit to the community that outweighs subject standard. 4, the variance is necessary and appropriate to make possible the reasonable use of the land. Again, rear access required. It's not really possible on this property. 5, variance is minimum variance that will afford relief in the subject standards of the code. So again, allowing the garage would be the minimum variance that would afford relief. And then 6, strict application of the code standards for which the variance was sought will produce undue hardship. Again, strict application of requiring rear access when there really isn't an alley or possibility of that would be unreasonable and undue hardship. And so just kind of to visualize, probably should have done this one first. 3 in section A, and 5 out of the 6 in section B. So that would be how staff found to recommend approval for this variance. So that's action item 1. So that's the front loading garage. So it will be separate. So again, just a visual. Again, we have the front loading garage that's coming off Palmer. This will be facing Palmer. So that's action item 1. Now we have action item 2, which again, it's a downtown core standard, and this is to consider design variance for a roof pitch less than 612 in the downtown core. And again, so this is specific to downtown core properties. So again, we have section A, variance requested does not harm the public health. Staff found it did not. 2, general conformance to the comprehensive plan, which again, similar, staff found similarly that, okay, he meets the comprehensive plan for infill development, providing housing opportunities, And then the intent of this standard is also met. And I'll get more into the design code standard. So it code prohibits flat roofs. This section of code is looking at mainly prohibiting flat roofs. It provides 612 as a minimum, but again, kind of weighing the balance of the standard to the benefit. Staff found that the benefit meeting the comprehensive plan balanced with such, making a variance for the subject standard. The variance requested will not violate building or fire code requirements. Does not violate either of those. So again, section A needs to meet all three. Staff found that it met all three. And then section B, so again, at least 4 of these criteria need to be met. So 1, the variance requested advances the goals and policies of the code. In the downtown design standards, it makes references to neighborhood context and how the design of a particular property matches those on block face. And staff looked at other properties on the block at 1116 Palmer, which has an existing, so they have a gable roof with a pitch of less than 612, and that would be the next property next door. I have some photos here in a second. They also have a flat roof, and then also just in the general neighborhood, there are several other gable roofs that would probably have pitches of less than 612. So kind of have some similarities. 2, subject property has an exceptional shape, topography, or building configuration. And so in this case, what kind of prompted the 312 roof pitch was trying to keep the building height down. And part of that is happening is because of the topography of the site. It's pretty steep. And so things, the site design has to kind of going more into it. This was all done to kind of accommodate for that topography. 3, variance requested results and benefits to the community. They are equivalent or exceed benefits associated with the subject standard. So again, the proposed roof styles of gabled roof, which is allowed in the downtown core. The pitch is beneath the minimum of 612. But again, the intent of that staff found the intent of that code section is to prevent and prohibit flat roofs in the downtown core, which this is not. It's a gabled roof which is allowed and is not a flat roof. And 4, the variance is necessary and appropriate to make possible the reasonable use of the land or structures on the property. Not applicable. Staff found that this is not necessary and appropriate. You can build something else, but again, it needs to meet 4 of these criteria. And then 5, the variance is the minimum variance that will afford release of the subject standards of the code. So staff found that's the minimum variance that will afford relief. 6, the strict application of the code standards for which a variance is sought would produce undue hardship. And staff found that was not met. So again, this is kind of how it breaks down. It meets all 3, 3 of the 3 required, and then out of the 6, it met 4. So that's how staff arrived at the conclusion to recommend approval for this. So again, you can see we have a 312 roof pitch on the gable roof floor of the structure. And then again, this is just kind of a visual. So 612 and steeper, that's everything that would be approved with the standard. And then 612 and under is everything that would require. And then so again, some neighborhood context. So this is 11, I think 12 Palmer. You go down the street, similar scale of a home. You have a gable roof with kind of probably the pitch less than 612, and then again similar scale of a building. And then this is actually just the building next door. So existing conditions. So they have a flat roof on front porch, with the roof as well, and a front loading garage. So again, so that's action item 2. Now action item 3 is an administrative adjustment. And so just to explain, so typically an administrative adjustment is something that's reviewed by staff. And that's when you have, so you have the code standard is for a building height of 27 feet. Administrative adjustment would allow for a 15% past that standard. And it's typically reviewed and approved by the director. But because this administrative adjustment is included in an application that has other items that come before you, it's reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission. So that's why you're hearing this particular item. And so like I said, the maximum height in the zoning district is 27 feet. the additional 15% would allow for a building height up to 31 feet. And that is measured from grade. So you can see it called out, this is, facing Palmer. It's called out from grade to the midpoint of a gable, the highest gable. So on the west elevation, it's 30 feet. And then on the north elevation, so it's also about 30 feet, because here staff is taking kind of that finished grade. So that grade out area, again, this site has kind of a sloping topography. So the grade is a little bit different on each elevation. We're taking the same point on the north elevation, which would be where it says lower level. Since we took that as grade on the west, we're also taking that on the north, because there is like a walkway. You can see that door. That's where the ADU is. So that's a path. So that's going to be some like a level surface. So measured from there to that gable again would require the administrative adjustment. And the other two elevations of the home to the grading of the site are under 27 feet. And do not require this. So the criteria for an administrative adjustment, so it's not so much as like with the design variance of it checks this box, checks this box. With administrative adjustment, the decision-making body, which is you all, shall consider whether or not, to what extent the adjustment will not result in will not result in incompatible development. So staff found that proposed use is by right by the zoning district, and the building scale and height is also similar to existing structures on the block face. Will not result in adverse impacts unless adequately mitigated. So again, additional height will not really result in adverse impacts. It's only actually 2 of the 4 elevations. And again, it's similar in scale to other structures on the block face. And then C is of a technical nature and is required. And staff found that 1, to compensate for an unusual site condition, challenging topography. And so again, this is not so much checking a box, but to seeing to what extent the requested adjustment meets these criteria. So sent out to the following referral agencies. And so a lot of these comments, there weren't many comments on the specific variances themselves, but just development of the site, which if the design variances and administrative adjustment were approved, they would go through with the building permit and grading approval process, which would require drainage letter, geotechnical, more thorough review. So a lot of these departments didn't, the specific variances, they didn't have, it all had to do with if the site were to be developed. And public comments, no public comments were received. So again, so just kind of a summary, we have action item 1 for the front loading garage, which staff recommended approval. We have action item 2 for the roof pitch, which staff recommended approval. And then 3, the administrative adjustment for the building height on the west and north elevations, for which staff recommended approval. So, 3 things.
Okay, thanks, Emery. Questions?
I'll be quick.
No, take your time.
Emery, do you know what the intent of the code is for not having front loading garages?
my
Is it a
question.
safety issue or is it aesthetics?
I think a little bit of both. If you're on the main road, come back to the alley, traffic is generally slower, and then also yes, aesthetics kind of fits in with the design back then. Again, this is for the downtown core, original town sites, and a lot of those houses were built before cars. So it's a little bit of both safety and aesthetics.
And then the height adjustment, do we know, is the parcel behind it owned by a private individual? Like if somebody wanted to build there, it wouldn't create any sort of.
So the parcel behind it,
There are a lot of people that own parcels behind.
so the parcel behind it, so you have basically, so Venture Avenue, as far as it being like usable,
Right.
stops about right there. And then the right of way continues. So you would have from the back of this property, you would have the distance to the right of way. And then these properties are private owners too. So yes, that's where those are. But again, the slope keeps going. So
Right.
you're considerably
higher
quite
than,
higher for those properties, so if anything were to be built too, like they would probably, so you're looking at quite a differential.
Okay.
I don't
so it
think-
wouldn't create any sort of adverse situation for those people behind.
Correct,
them.
you would not have a block view.
Okay, great.
Okay, Jim, please.
Is the current use non-conforming to any degree?
Yeah, so the current use, if you can see on the site plan, you can see the dashed line of where that existing trailer is. So the existing trailer is actually in the front right setback. As far as the structure, I don't know if you can make that out.
And no other non-conforming issues?
Yeah, so the shed would also be demoed, so yeah, that, and then. Yeah, so you have front setback for the primary structure, side setback for the accessory structure, both of which. would be demolished.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Well, and I guess the front, we have the existing curb cut, so that.
Right.
So.
Okay. This is intended for all of staff. If this were only an administrative adjustment, would you have been inclined to approve it?
Yeah, again, it's two of the 4 elevations, and then, it's within the 15%. This is kind of designed for this fact that we got to grade, being graded differently, and how we measure height.
Okay.
Yes.
I only have one other question for the applicant when we get a chance to meet them. Other than that, thank you.
Carolyn.
Emery, could you go over again the covered porch in the front setback? What is allowed and what's not?
Sure, so in this property, the setback, the front setback is 20 feet. Now, if you have an uncovered porch, that can go 10 feet into that front setback. It can get no closer than 10 feet from the property line.
What if it's covered?
So covered would be, so it's more of the size. So code refers to 65% covered.
Ah.
So you could have a roof on it, but it needs to be, either screened or open. Open would be the better word than covered on the sides.
Okay.
So if in the future, so again, you can see it's open deck railing. If in 15 years, someone wanted to fill in with actual walls, it would no longer be an open porch. It would be closed porch, which could not go into that setback.
Got it.
That's the open porch, allowed 10 feet, but again, if you close that, it's not an porch.
Okay, thanks.
Pete.
Good staff report, Emery. So on action 2, that the roof's less than 612. So, and I think your justification was good. I'm good with that. But so it's 312s. And I guess what my question is I guess that we wouldn't make that be a code change because again, you would look at each individual location of where it is, because here you looked at the neighborhood and the next door, there's a flat roof and a 312 across the street. I mean, so this is consistent with that, but let's say it was downtown on Blake or something like that, then would that be could be a different outcome from that?
Yeah, I would say so. When the downtown core, has kind of a whole paragraph that speaks about, okay, comparing it to existing structures in the block face. So yeah, if we took the same project and put it on a different block in the downtown core, we would want to look at, okay, well, what's already there? So that would be evaluated.
So that's why you'd stay with the 6. Yeah, okay. Thanks.
So keep the standard, but
Yep.
again.
That makes sense to me.
Context.
Right.
On previous applications, there's been discussions, and I think there was some verbiage in your report about stepping down architectural features. And I believe you were saying that this design meets those standards, so there was no reason for a variance in that regard.
Correct, so, so again, this is kind of the existing site. And so that stepping down needs to occur when an infill, building is built and it is greater than the neighboring structure by more than 1 story. So again, we have some grade here. So going up Palmer, it would not differ by more than 1 story. So no stepping down is required on that side, but on this other side, stepping down was required, which is why you see here, this section is stepped down on that upper floor for 50% of the building width.
So the ridge drops, the
Correct.
highest
Yeah.
ridge.
This
Okay.
section,
Mhm.
this section right here. Then again.
Right, okay. And could you go through again? I'm not clear on how the height is calculated. It's not from existing grade?
So actually, let's bring up the other elevations, so you can see each one. So we'll start, okay, so if you're standing on Palmer, grade is taken, so this is grade. where the driveway is.
Existing grade,
No, it'd be finished.
finished grade.
It's a finished grade. So finished grade, midpoint of the gable, which again, this is over 27, so administrative adjustment on the west. So then we come around to the north side of the building. This is a finished walkway, so there is some grade above it, but since this is kind of a continued grade from that front level, it's a paved path coming off the driveway. That's where we took grade from. So again, on this elevation, it also exceeds that 27, which is requiring the administrative adjustment. And then as we go to the back of the house with the east, and so we take finished grades, we actually took from this corner and went to the midpoint. That was under 27 feet. And then similarly on this side, it's taken from this point right here, this grade to the midpoint. So that was under 27 feet. So again, you're looking at north elevation and west elevation.
So it doesn't apply to this project, obviously, but what would prevent somebody from going in and filling a lot and building on top of that rather than computing from existing grade? And maybe that's a discussion for another time.
No, it's a good question. I mean, the way that we measure is from the finished grade.
Yeah.
Existing. So
Which I don't know any other district that does that. Do you, Pete? I mean, I know the county doesn't, Garfield County, and Up Valley, they don't.
Always a measure of contention for me.
Yeah, okay, just a discussion for another time.
There's a lot of stuff on this as well. So-
Yeah.
We could ask
I mean,
Patty.
What do you think, Pat?
So I guess we wouldn't even be discussing this issue really if it hadn't been attached to the request for the variance anyway. Okay, that's what I wanted to, So there.
So there.
That was a rhetorical statement.
Okay, would no other
And
comments,
definition.
questions up here? Would the applicant care to come forward and present their project? And thank you. State your name and address for the record, please. Sure.
My name is Timothy Cashel, and I am the owner as well as the applicant.
That's his address.
That's my address, 1120 Palmer Avenue.
Okay, and do we have questions? Joy?
I was curious what the material of the siding is going to be.
We have a couple different side materials. We're going to do some concrete board and then I guess just regular siding. Yeah, corrugated metal in one section and then some cement board siding.
Already born.
Carolyn, please. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I have a couple of questions. It's sort of about the design and I understand this is preliminary, so these may be addressed later, but on the front loading garage elevation, it sort of appears as though the porch columns might impede entering the garage.
Yeah, that's just an oversight at the moment right now. We'll be changing that.
And the stairs are inside the building, not outside, right?
Yeah, that's a secondary access. It's the outside stairs as well as some inside stairs that'll.
So from the garage level to get to the main living level, not the ADU, the stairs are interior?
We do have interior as well as the exterior.
Okay. And I also presume that as you get access to the ADU on the side, there's probably some grading that has to happen that we're not quite seeing there. And I know you've only got your 5 feet.
Yeah.
But that's on your radar too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great, thanks.
Jim, please.
What's the difference between the existing height from grade and the proposed height from grade?
Meaning the existing height of the structure that is there right now.
Right, it's hard to, because you'll probably change the grade a bit,
Yeah.
but what is the general height of the
I
building?
think right now the structure is 12 feet and then the proposed structure will be closer to like the west facing. It's going to be it's a 30 feet to the midpoint of the gable.
Okay. And is any type of excavation a possibility to maintain the height and avoid the administrative adjustment request?
We were actually talking about that today, and I think it's kind of something that either way, there's going to be a requirement for the administrative adjustment, just because of the difficult nature of the topography in that area. Either way, we're going to have sections that will be more than 27 feet because of where we're measuring.
Wasn't being critical, I was just asking for clarification. Otherwise, it looks like a positive development and a well-written staff report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll open up for any public comment on this project. See if there's anybody. See none here. Is there any online? No? Okay, I'll close the public comment period and bring it back up for a motion on planning file 8221 design variance, 1120 Palmer. Action item 1, design variance to allow a front loading garage in the downtown core. The staff recommendation is approval with findings and conditions on 14 to 17 of the staff report.
I'll make a motion to approve the design variance request, considering a design variance to allow the front loading garage. Staff recommends approval, given the findings and conditions on pages 14 through 17, which I think then just included all of them. Right, Emery? I mean,
I think so, yeah.
yeah, I'm good. Okay. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Waller
I'll second.
and a second by Commissioner Connerton. Any discussion?
I have one last thing. We do have a couple letters from neighbors. I'm not sure if that makes any difference for you guys, if that's something you want for public. Position.
Well, yeah, let's bring those forward and make that. Does anybody care to see these?
So those weren't sent into the city?
No, they were just handwritten, which both of them, so they didn't have printers. And
Have you seen these, Emery?
Like read them into the record?
How do we handle these?
No.
Richard?
No, Anna saying no.
I don't think that we need to read them into the record, but but we will put them into we'll scan them into the record.
Okay,
right.
well, be noted that we have 2 letters from
In support.
people that are neighbors.
He's
and-
like,
Right.
the project. Are you the
Crazy.
If the chair would like to characterize letters.
We see no issue with the front facing garage. We think this will improve the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I would call that a positive approval. This party says they're 100% behind the of this application.
Did you write these, Tim?
The oldest trailers in town.
Yeah, it's been there, yeah, at least
Is it
40 years.
historic? Is it historic?
Yeah, historical preservation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question.
Are we voting for all three?
No, this is action item 1.
Only action.
We're going to take them one at a time.
For planning item 8221, item 1, front loading garage. The vote passes unanimously.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on action item 2, which is a design variance request for a roof pitch of less than 612 in the downtown core on planning item 1122, sorry. Oh, no, 8221. And staff recommends approval with findings and conditions on pages 14 to 17.
I'll make a motion to approve action 2 for the design variance for the roof pitch less than 612, given the findings and conditions on pages 14 through 17 of the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Waller.
I'll approve once again.
Okay, and we have a second from Commissioner Connerton. Any further discussion? Seeing, yes.
I might have objected to the less than steep roof pitch. Obviously, 612 would be difficult, but I was very convinced by the fact that the adjacent properties have real similar roofs and also that you've just set the roofs back a little from the street face. And I think that'll help kind of tuck them back there in the trees. So I think you made a good compromise there.
Call the question.
For planning item 8221, 1120 Palmer, item 2 for the height variance. The item passes unanimously.
Okay, action item 3 under planning item 8221 is a consideration of an administrative adjustment for the building height in 15% excess of maximum building height of 27 feet. In the residential medium density zoning, of staff recommends approval with findings and conditions on pages 14 to 17.
I'll make a motion to approve action 3 for the administrative adjustment for building height in excess of 15% of maximum building height of 27 feet, given the findings and conditions on pages 14 through 17 of the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion for approval by Commissioner Waller.
Do we need to clarify that as administrative adjustment or action? Or does it matter?
Well, I'm just reading that it
Oh, sorry.
says, I just read that. I don't know. Like on page 2 of that.
I apologize, you're right.
Okay, I have a motion
And a second.
and a second from Commissioner Sipperly. Discussion. Well, back to my point about the slope of the lot. Actually, I think you wouldn't even need this administrative approval if it were measured from existing grades. Just my thought. I'm not certain of that, not having surveyed it, but call the question.
And I just would like to make a correction. Planning item 8221, item 2 should have been roof pitch. The pitch of the roof, not the height. It passes unanimous. For planning item 8221, height variance, this item also passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. All right, that is the agenda except for commissioner comments. I'll start with Commissioner Weimer.
Good.
I'm good, thank you.
The other end.
No, thanks.
I just want to say it's really nice to see local kids being able to stay in the town that they grew up in and being able to, find creative ways to house themselves with the ADU and the existing lot. And of course, the resources of your father being able to help you build. It's awesome. His wealth, those resources. Anyways, well done.
Thank you for having us here.
I had a question on the housing RFP. So I was on that. Oh, maybe that's gonna come up later. So my question is, so the housing RFP, and maybe you just can explain to everyone this, but my question was, so what did city council do with the recommendation that our committee made?
So city council has only had a work session on the RFP, which was last week. And they will be taking up the item for an action on their meeting May 5th. So Habitat for Humanity was present and gave a very similar presentation to the project steering committee. Council asked questions, and now they have some deliberation time to think about it before it comes back for a decision.
So does everybody here know about what that RFP is?
I should expect so. This is a request for proposals that the city put out on 2 city-owned parcels, one at 8th and Midland and another on Airport Road near Cardiff Glen neighborhood. So city-owned property that the city was looking to partner for affordable housing projects. So we put out the proposal, and Habitat for Humanity was our sole respondent. And so now city council has the job of determining if the proposal is solid enough to move forward with on those properties, either one or both, or none.
Can we help plan?
Well, I need a job, Carolyn.
And you will probably see
Yes,
these in
you
some
will.
form or fashion as it comes through the process. So.
Right, so city council is not approving what it looks like, the units. This is just moving forward with Habitat as a development partner.
Earmark the parcels.
Right, yeah, so lots of planning to come, and if it moves forward, I know Habitat has, probably some of you are very familiar with how they operate in their communities and doing community outreach and public charrettes and design of that nature. So if city council does move forward with it, with this developer, that's likely how that would look.
Are you proposing that the city is a co-applicant?
We have that as an opportunity. Yes, it has not been entirely determined yet.
It's very exciting, by the way. I think that's
It is very exciting.
Because it's for sale stuff, and because when Habitat for Humanity does it, the money that they get coming in makes the for sales prices unheard of these kind of days. So
Pretty
it's
impressive numbers.
pretty
they were
exciting.
able to put out, but that is
Who
to be
would know they're a
determined.
developer?
I would just like to compliment Emory. I've gotten a report from someone that was doing due diligence on short-term rentals, and they were impressed by your delivery and thoroughness and politeness, and awesome.
He knows all about accessory structures with setback.
I looked up
Yeah.
who made that mistake, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like, who did it?
Director's comments.
We will have another steering committee meeting on May 10th, and it's likely to be a format for the comprehensive plan that's more similar to what happened at the last Wednesday open houses. So we're looking at kind of stations and being able to react to those. So we will do our best to get you information in advance, but it will be more kind of open house style in terms of the steering committee. And we certainly hope that everybody can attend. And then we have extended an invitation to Dr. Guzman, who works at CMC and who has been helping us with the ad hoc housing committee, which is making a recommendation to city council also on May 5th. So if you are able to attend, I would say that meeting is at 9 on May 5th. So that might be difficult for schedules, but if you're able to attend, you may find that interesting.
And oh, go ahead.
I just had,
No,
well, I had a different question on another topic. So the last comp plan meeting I thought was interesting. I mean, I was a Zoom participant because I think I was recovering from COVID, but so as far as comments and for feedback for the consultant on the amount of traffic, and in fact, I guess I kind of have a question on that. Is the traffic going through Glenwood? So is that what, and I know you know what I'm talking about on that 70% or whatever. Is there any additional stuff on that, or is that to be saved for that?
So that data was from RAFTA. So it wasn't our data. And I think they were trying to make a point generally. And I think that there was some concern that it was that information that related to how many people are driving into this community, how many workers are we importing, how many workers start in Glenwood Springs and continue to other places, was of interest to the steering committee. So we are separately
I thought the language was spicy.
of interest.
yeah.
Of interest. So the we are working with Fair and Pierce they have some streetlight data, which is data that we've used, which is different. It's also cell phone data, but the way that they track it is different than the data from 2017. It was not our data, it was from RAFTA. We are looking at a way to fund that for some other things that we're doing. So a grant application, some affordable housing stuff. It may also be of interest to the comprehensive plan. We are looking to see if Fair and Pierce can do that for us. But I think the point is generally that we import workers and workers start here and travel other places. I think that it wasn't so, I don't know that we, for the level of the comp plan, which is visionary, need to have that kind of granular detail, but we would do our best to provide that information. It is an additional expense. It would not be, we're hoping to, because it will be used generally for other projects in the city, to have it be separate and apart from the comprehensive plan.
And it just seems to me like, and I don't know, I was an engineer and got beat up on data for many years. And is a question is that a lot of times when you find a point of data that you question and you think's not good, then you tend to put it, a lot of times people put it over a whole project. So, I mean, I think it's a real important, from my perspective, an important thing to address, because I think, I mean, obviously I thought it was spicier comment and not a point of interest, but I mean, people were pretty upset with that data. And I just think that it's a real important thing. And I'm sure coming back next time, that seems like a good thing to address. So, because it gives credibility, I think, to that consultant as a whole for the data that they bring forth. I guess that's my.
And I guess I will say that Terry looked at the data. It was presented to RAFTA. It was the first time that anybody had questioned that data to that extent. So I would just say that, well, I'll just leave that there.
Hey, can you, what were you saying about Guzman, what was CMC?
Oh, we're inviting Dr. Guzman to participate in the steering committee, so adding her to the steering committee. She had been very helpful in the conversations we've been having with the ad hoc housing committee, and wanted to invite her to this process. There are some folks who were not able to participate because of I think it was that we changed the date maybe. So looking to kind of expand that group. And Commissioner Davey will be joining us as well.
Do we feel like those steering committee meetings are progressive or like effective at this point?
I think that I would encourage you to think about how you want to participate so that you are steering the process so that the comprehensive plan is, so you are representing the community and representing how we want to move forward. And I think checking the data or checking the overall direction, and we're not there yet. We're not to the point of the recommendations yet. So I think that the real nitty gritty of where you guys are going to be steering is coming. This is, here are the topics. This is where we're going. This is information, providing some feedback. I think you're missing this. I think you're missing this. But you're not to the actual recommendation piece yet because it's a long process. And I think that it's intended to be cumulative over time. And again, I also think that the one piece of data is, remember, this is a visionary document. We talked about today that there were some examples of what you're using that master plan to evaluate development against. And those comments are generally general and visionary. So it's not like it's not like a site plan where it's very specific. It's not like the code where it's very specific. It's who are we, where are we going, who do we want to be?
Right. It's our mission statement as a city. Yeah.
Next month?
Next meeting, we have one.
Oh. Thanks for clarifying.
Well, there will be dinner. There will be dinner. to be determined. We have, as ever, shifting application processes. So we've had some applications that have continued along the way. We do believe that they are coming in May, fingers crossed. So it should be a full agenda. Location and extents, your favorite. And then lots more applications after that.
No doubt.
Summertime.
I mean, specifically, we should say that we anticipate that it's the Excel project, the line extension project.
I was trying to be all coy.
And the BRAFTA headquarters
projects.
And
those
then-
are intended to be in May. As usual, or as always, that can change. And so those are what's on the slate currently. We hope that that is the case.
They were also intended to be in January, so.
Right on schedule.
They've continued a little bit down the road, but they're on the agenda again.
Quasi-governmental agencies.
That's all we
Okay.
got for you.
We done here? Meeting's adjourned.
Happens when we